Good morning and happy Sabbath Covenant Advent Church. And good morning and happy Sabbath to those of you who've joined us online. Welcome to our Sabbath School service. Thank you for joining, and I pray you'll be blessed as we worship together this day. We will start with our opening hymn, hymn number 616. Please rise for our opening hymn, hymn 616. Hymn 616. Soldiers of Christ, arise and put your armor on, strong in the strength which God supplies through His eternal Son, strong in the Lord of hosts and in His mighty power, who in the strength of Jesus trust is more than conqueror. Stand then in His great might, with all His strength and you, but take to arm you for the fight, the panoply of God, that having all things done, and all your conflicts past, you may overcome through Christ alone, and stand entire at last. From strength to strength go on, wrestle and fight and pray. Tread all the powers of darkness down, and when the well-fought day, still let the Spirit cry, in all His soldiers come, till Christ the Lord who reigns on high shall take the conquerors home. Amen. Let us kneel for our opening prayer. Dear, kind, merciful Father, thank you, Lord, for allowing us to assemble here and online to hear your words this morning. I pray, Lord, that you will be with us as we've entered into the Sabbath hours. I pray, Lord, that the themes of this lesson study will be impressed upon our minds and our hearts. And I pray, Lord, that you will be with us and guide us through these hours. In Jesus' name, amen. Welcome once again. Our opening scripture for this morning will be coming from Hebrews chapter 11, verse 31. Hebrews 11, 31. And I'll read in your hearing. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 31, and it reads, "By faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace." May the Lord add a rich blessing to the reading of His holy word. So as you know, we are in a brand new quarter. We are in the second Sabbath of our brand new quarter, where we are studying Joshua. And the lesson study for this week was entitled Surprised by Grace. Surprised by Grace. And there were two notable stories that were used for this lesson study this week. That being Rahab the harlot, who hid the spies and then later was able, and in so doing, was able to gain safety and security for her family, and then the Gibeonites, who also tried to gain their safety but did so in a not quite honest way, which led to some consequences for them. And although the lesson study starts with the story of Rahab and ends on the Gibeonites, I wanted to flip it a little bit because I like to try to end on something positive. So I will start with a reading from Patriarchs and Prophets, and this is coming from page 506 and 507. Again, this is Patriarchs and Prophets, page 506 and 507. And this is a commentary on the story of the Gibeonites, where, just to set the scene, if you will, they pretended that they were from some foreign distant land, and they wanted to try to strike an agreement or an elite, I would say, a treaty, if you will, with the Israelites, because they knew that God was with them, and they knew that they would be conquering the land, and to avoid any loss of their land or any kind of harm coming to them from, they tried to make an alliance, but use some deceptive means. So again, this is coming from Patriarchs and Prophets, pages 506 and 507. And it notes, the territory of the Gibeonites comprised 4 cities. The people were not under the rule of a king, but were governed by elders or senators. Gibeon, the most important of their towns, was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and all the men thereof were mighty. It is a striking evidence of the terror with which the Israelites had inspired the inhabitants of Canaan, that the people of such a city should have resorted to so humiliating an expedient to save their lives. But it would have fared better with the Gibeonites had they dealt honestly with Israel. While their submission to Jehovah secured the preservation of their lives, their deception brought them only disgrace and servitude. God had made provision that all who would renounce heathenism and connect themselves with Israel should share the blessings of the covenant. They were included under the term the stranger that sojourneth among you, and with few exceptions this class were to enjoy equal favors and privileges with Israel. The Lord's direction was, if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him, but the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. Leviticus 19:33 and 34. Concerning the Passover and the offering of sacrifices, it was commanded, one ordinance shall be both for you of the congregation, and also for the stranger that sojourneth with you. As ye are, so shall the stranger be before the Lord. Numbers 15:15. Such was the footing on which the Gibeonites might have been received, but for the deception to which they had resorted. It was no light humiliation to those citizens of a royal city, all the men whereof were mighty, who to be made hewers of wood and drawers of water throughout their generations. But they had adopted the garb of poverty for the purpose of deception, and it was fastened upon them as a badge of perpetual servitude. Thus, through all their generations, their servile condition would testify to God's hatred of falsehood. And with that, we will have our prayer for our teacher and then go right into our lesson study. Please kneel as we have our prayer for our teacher. Dear kind Heavenly Father, humbly we bow before Thee once again, asking that You would send Your Holy Spirit to be amongst us here and with those viewing online. I pray, Lord, that You will be with our minds and our hearts this morning as we go through the lesson study, and that You may grant a double portion of Your Spirit on the teacher as he leads the lesson. These and many blessings I ask in Thy Son's name. Amen. I'll now turn the Sabbath School Study Hour over to our elder, Elder Jose Otero.
Welcome and thank you for joining us here at Covenant Adventist Church Sabbath School Study. As Sister Tamara mentioned, we're in the new quarter. Is it on now? Keep forgetting. Well, thank you again for joining us here at Covenant Adventist Church. We're taking a look at a new quarter, as Sister Tamara mentioned, and we are looking at this interesting process of going into the Promised Land. The process started by Moses in the land of Egypt, and now the 40 years are over, and now we're up to the point in time when they're it's a new generation that has come up, and now Joshua is chosen as leader by God, trained by Moses, or trained by God through Moses, and now there's this new era in the history of the Israelites have begun, where they're gonna now start to move forward. And so what lessons can we learn from this study of Joshua? And how can those lessons be applied to our lives, my life today, to make it better so we can overcome and conquer sin and live a righteous life? And so I can tell you right off the bat, one lesson that I've learned is that we have to be careful who our leaders are. Why? Why do we have to be careful as to the leaders we have? It may seem straightforward, right? But the problem is, if you have a monarchy, who's going to be next in line? Do you have a choice in that? Do you want to live under that system? Or the people that live under the system, who benefits the most? And so we have to be very careful as to who we choose as a leader, or what kind of leadership we want to live under. And so, of course, the influence of the leader is on the masses, the nation. And this can cause so much damage to the lives of the people in which they're in charge of. And I think that comes to my next point. It's important for us to understand that we have to have a leader that has the best interests of the people, right? If the leader does not take care of the people, what do you have a nation that's going to be strong? And so we have to be very, very careful with leadership. Just think about if Joshua was the leader of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. How different would it be? Because we all called to be a Joshua and a Moses, right? Because behind Moses, there's a true Moses. Behind Joshua, there's a true Joshua. And so these two individuals were chosen to lead Israel, but they're doing the will of God. And so we're called to do the same thing with our families and whatever responsibilities we have. We are to go forward doing the will of God. And so originally, the intent of God was, when the children of Israel left Egypt, what was the intent? That they go into the promised land, right? Without the way in which they were fighting. But now, because of rebellion and apostasy, what happens now? Now they're going to have to work a little harder because of this. And with war, you're going to have casualties, right? That's just a reality. You're going to have a group of people that are going to go in and fight against another group of people. People are going to get hurt. And some even going to lose their lives. And so Joshua was faithful, but did he still have to go and fight? Did he still have to go and show up? Now, in Jericho's situation, of course, we know the wall went down, but they still had to go in and do what? What they had to do with the sword. They had to do something with the sword, right? And so this is one of the things that happens when we're rebelling against God. We're going to have some serious consequences. But one thing I can tell you about Joshua, 40 years before, right? He was one of the spies, right? The other one was Caleb. And how was his faith back then? What did he say? God has given us this land, and we can go in and we can take it. So Joshua, even before being chosen as a leader, what was he saying? Let's move forward. And this is one of the things that I see in the life of Joshua. He had this perseverance kind of characteristic of himself that impresses me. Because in life, what do we have to do every day? Don't we have to continue forward? But how are we supposed to continue forward? And this is where Joshua differentiates himself from other leaders. He goes and he consults with God, right? And then he follows the will of God. And this is, for me, a characteristic also of Jesus, where he prayed all night, remember? And then he went out to heal and preach and do the goodness of God, do the will of God, show his character. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that 40 years before, Joshua was, let's move forward. 40 years later, let's move forward, right? Not once have I seen that Joshua said, let's go back to Egypt, like some of the other people in Israel. His character did not change. It only expanded, and it only blossomed. Of course, there were some mistakes with this situation with the Gibeonites, but still, Joshua grew. And I see this as an example of what true leadership is. And me reading the book of Joshua teaches me how to become a better leader, and really commit or surrender myself to God. That's the only way we can truly be true leaders. Think about how Joshua led, and think about how leaders lead today. It's totally opposite, right? Joshua led from the beginning, or from the beginning of the group, right? Shepherds, how do they lead? You have shepherds in the front. They're supposed to be in the front. But of course, we know in other countries, shepherds do their jobs a little bit different, right? But only in Israel are they taught that the shepherds lead from the front, and the flock follows. And so this is important how we view life today. We have to lead by example, so to speak. And this is so important on what I'm going to tell you, because it's mentoring is so important when individuals decide to be pastors, because the mentoring is so important. If you look at the mentoring of Joshua, right? Can he be a pastor? Look at the way individuals are trained today, or they're mentored today. Can they be pastors in the right sense of truly pastoring a church? You don't have to answer, but you think about that. And so we have an experience of that we're reading of Joshua that entails a lot of practical godliness in his life. And his desire never wavered all throughout the 40 years. He stayed with Israel. Israel knew him. He knew Israel. When he became the leader, they said, wherever you go, we will go. And so that's the way you move forward in life in order for you to overcome, because they're moving forward, and what they're facing. What is that city? What is right there across that body of water? Some people call it a city, right? I call it a monster, if you will, because they're going to be facing these walls that are described as impenetrable. And in life, you know, we can face that kind of reality in our lives. And in Sunday's lesson, in Joshua chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "And Joshua the son of Nun set out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, Go view the land, even Jericho. And they went and came into an harlot's house named Rahab, and lodged there." And look what it says there. What kind of woman? It's specifying the lifestyle, right? So we have a situation here where it's telling us that, you know, this is a harlot and she doesn't have the best lifestyle. And how important it is for us to deal with people. It's amazing, because I'm getting ahead of myself again, but when we're dealing with people, do we see them underneath us? Like when Jesus went to the well, what kind of woman was that? And what kind of lifestyle? Did Jesus look down upon her? This is the gospel, right? I'm he. And she accepted. But again, we're looking at a story where Joshua's moving forward and we want to be successful. How can we be successful? Because there are going to be a lot of challenges in our way. And there are many Jerichos in our lives. Think about how Israel has been taken care of. Where did they get their water? Did they have to dig wells? Because I'm thinking about this. You know, you're living in the desert, there's certain things you need, right? And God provided. God provided the water. Think about when they had to cross over the body of an ocean, so to speak, or a big, massive body of water. God, part the sea. He parted the waters, and they were able to cross. And, Joshua is looking at this, and the people are looking at this. But I'm thinking that Joshua was having a different experience than the people. I think he was having a deeper experience. And the faith that's in Joshua is sealed every time that he prays, every time that Joshua experiences something, and he says, he's asking God for guidance, and God is giving him the knowledge and the wisdom. This increases Joshua's life. I think from Israel, Israel, I think that at this particular time, there was a generation that was more faithful than the other generation, but still they had their issues. But for Joshua, serving the Lord was top priority. And no matter what the challenges were, he always went back to God. He never said, let me go back, to Egypt. Think about getting into a relationship with someone, and when trouble hits, they say, let me just go back being single. Or if you're in a business relationship and there's trouble, which trouble is going to come, right? And their reaction is like, let's just sell this business. Is it difficult, or is it easier to deal with someone that's faithful, that's always going to be there, no matter what happens, whether in the church, whether business, whether family, it doesn't matter. They're stick in there. It's easier to deal with someone like that because there's a certain stability. Knowing that no matter what happens, your leader is going to be there. When trouble hits and the person goes, how is that going to affect you? When trouble hits, who should be in the midst? Who should be there in the middle, right there? What's going on? No, this is sin. I got to deal with this. You see, Joshua had to deal with these things, and he did it in a way that influenced others to continue to move forward. Because if there's somebody there in the midst of issues, always, fighting that battle, eventually people are going to come in line. It's either you come in line or you have to, leave the camp or leave the business or leave, because I'm moving forward. And so you can either continue to move forward in faith, or you can go back to Egypt. And I don't know of anybody that went back to Egypt, but I'm saying this is life. And a family works best when they're together, right? When they're working together. But if one member is doing this and one member is doing that, and does the family move forward? Are they a good example of what true Christian life is? And so we have to continue to move forward, because sometimes in life there's not going to be a bridge for you to cross over. There's going to be bumps in the way. Sometimes there's not going to be no food or water. Sometimes we're going to have problems that you just don't know what to do. And in these times, the book of Joshua tells us there's a God that knows the beginning from the end. He does not change. He can get you through. And so this experience of Joshua teaching me to continue to move forward in your Christian life. In your Christian life, you're not going to have everything smooth. There's going to be some bumps because of sin. And we're in a position, or we should be in a position now, to have a handle on this, that we become I don't want to say experts in overcoming, but we know the process already. We understand that these things are going to take place. But God, we have to cooperate with God, and together we can move forward, right? And we can experience that overcoming, and that in turn will increase our faith. Because the truth of the matter is, Jerichos are not going to go away. We're going to encounter Jerichos, and in life, they may be even failures. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a second chance. So there would be no need for a second chance if there were no failures. But God teaches us, we can overcome. You have a second chance. Think about this when you were young. When you're riding a bike, if you will fall and you would say, oh, I'm never going to get on that bike, what would happen? You're never going to learn how to ride. You're not going to be able to get from point A to point B in a way that was intended you to travel. Think about how many people have been in a car accident and what they're going to do. Some people get back on the car and start driving it and get back the confidence back, because this is life. In life, we're going to fall off the bike. In life, we're going to have a little, close call. And sometimes that's even an accident. But we have to continue forward in faith and think, things could have been worse. God has provided for us. And so from faith to faith, this is how we live. And God wants us to experience continual success. We don't have to continually be tripping over that same stumbling block. That, what is it? It was a stumbling block for the Jews, and they continue to stumble over the same block. Well, you can do that, or decide, let's make this into a stepping stone so we can continue to move forward. Stumbling blocks does not allow us to move forward. Except what we do, we stumble and then we fall, and some people lose their teeth. They break their hip. Some people, we don't have to live like that, always tripping and falling and hurting ourselves. We can overcome. And so what does Israel does? They send out how many spies? 12? Why not 12? Let's send 12 again, right? And that's one thing. It's just like they learn from the last time, right? And so in life, we have to learn from our mistakes, right? No, we're going to send out 2. And who sent out 2? Who had a part to play? Joshua. Because a spy should send out a spy, right? A faithful spy. I'm not talking about like that covert, spy that we think of today that does harm. I'm talking about a faithful spy doing something that's according to God's will. But things were different. The 2 spies are sent out, and what do they come back with? What message? The last time, 10 said, no, we can do this. 2 said, we can take this. And that confusion, God had to intervene because Joshua and Caleb were in danger of losing their life, right? Because that's what unfaithful people do, right? They throw stones. And so this time, what was the report? The report said, God said that the land is ours. This is possible. And we've seen the land. It is flowing with what? Milk and honey. Do you guys want milk and honey? God has promised you this. And they went out. So God has said, the land is yours. You can go in. The spies come back and say, we can take it. So there is a cooperation here. There's no doubt. Joshua is not into playing life as a game, game of chance. Let's try this and see if it works. Life is not like that. We should not play games with life. I remember somebody said, yeah, let's put these tariffs and see if it works. And see what happens. I'm like, no. You don't play life like that. Life doesn't work that way. You're playing with the lives of people. to see if you're hurting people. And you're thinking, if it doesn't work, we'll take it back. No, life doesn't work that way. Life works that if you do something, there's consequences to whatever you do. And so if the spies would have came back and said, no, we can't take it, what would happen? I think they would have been stoned and Israel would have still gone forward. Because what is the plan here? When Jesus said, I have to go to Jerusalem, what was going to stop him? So here we are, we're studying the gospel. What's going to happen at the end? The second coming, right? And the judgment. What's going to stop that? So I'm fast forwarding. Now I'm coming back. What are we going to do? What is our report? You know, heaven is a land with what? Flowing with milk and honey. Can we take it? Sure. God said that heaven is ours. That land of milk and honey is ours. And I'm coming back and I'm telling you, we can take it. We can go. We can overcome sin. And so, right? Come on. Right? And everybody should come, right? And this is life. Think about a leader. The God is saying, you should do this, and the leader is not listening. Should you follow that leader? You know, it's just. Let me give you an example. Babylon. What's his name? The guy that died. Belshazzar. When he saw the writing on the wall, how did he react? His knees were knocking together. If you see a leader and his knees are knocking, you're in the wrong place. Because what's next? Total destruction. And so you say to yourself, is this leader's knees are going to be knocking? Because if his knees are knocking, that means that whatever he gets, I'm going to get. And so we don't want a leader like that. We want a leader that is God-fearing, that is going to do the right thing. So that way, his knees don't have to be knocking. And so this individual in Babylon was giving how many chances? A second chance? A third chance? How many? He got years of chances, right? Before Nebuchadnezzar went to eat grass, how long did he have? Wasn't it like a year? Before he said, isn't this great Babylon that I have built? And then he went through that process of wheatgrass diet. And he had to detox. And then he came to his senses. We don't have to go through that process. Did that young man did he receive grace? I think so. Sure. He had the opportunity because who was still alive? Daniel. So it's either we can take that opportunity or not take that opportunity. And so God is giving Israel, says here, a second chance. But a second chance at what? What is this second chance about? Because they didn't do it before because of rebellion, but now God is saying, okay, I'm giving you another chance. Yes.
I wanted to make a point because I think that there's individuals that take that point of having a fearless leader to the extreme. Because like you mentioned, Joshua was fearless, but he was also faithful. He had faith in God, and that's why he was fearless. But nowadays, there are individuals that want a leader that is fearless, but they fail to attach to that a godly individual, and they let themselves be led by a so-called fearless leader that is leading them astray and taking them wherever that they want to go. And I think, as Christians, we have to be careful that we don't fall into that trap. It's like, oh no, I support this leader because this leader is fearless. He doesn't take anything from anybody. He pushes people around. He does whatever it is, and people subject to him. But that's not the type of leader that we are supposed to follow. We have to follow a leader that fears God, and that fear of God is what is compelling that individual to trust in God and to have faith in God and say like Joshua, because when we go back 40 years back, when Joshua was one of the 12 spies, it was his faith in God that made him say those things. We can take this land. Because he saw the same things that the other 11 saw. And yes, he did acknowledge, yes, they are giants. Yes, they are big. Yes, these are the things that, the challenges that we're going to encounter. But we have nothing to fear because God is with us. So it was that fear of God that gave him that confidence to move forward. But there are a lot of people that are very foolish and say like, oh yeah, let's do this, let's do that, let's let our leader lead us, but the leaders are faithless. The leaders are unbelieving, and then they are led astray and all over the place and wandering once again in the desert because they don't have no faith. And so we have to be careful that when we are choosing to follow a leader, that we choose a leader that is truly a God-fearing individual and not just some, I don't want to say schmuck, but somebody that is just there beating their chest and not necessarily using every power that could be behind them in order to then manifest their fear, right? Their fearlessness, as opposed to like Joshua. He stood there with just the fact that he knew that God would be the one that would deliver him. And as we later on, in the story of Joshua, that we're going to see that when he's fighting, he prays to God, for the sun to stand still. And because of his faith, God answers his prayer.
Many people see Joshua and they say, no, we don't want that. No, because they would see you being submissive or and surrender to God as being weak, or we're going to lose money, right? But people don't understand that there are consequences to that. If you choose a leader that's not faithful to his wife, that's not faithful to his family, or not faithful to the covenants that they make, what makes you think they're going to be faithful to the covenant they make with you? And so, right now, if you have a leader that's extremely unfaithful, not even to himself they're faithful, they break their own rules. And then they're working out something. I say to myself, that plan that they're working out with someone else, and they call it a peace plan, it's not to benefit anybody but themselves. I say, oh, I know what they're going to do. They want that line. And they're going to go in and say, this is peace, but it's not the peace in which we define as true peace. It's a peace is just a cover for what they want. And you'll see, You'll see. You just continue watching. And then you'll see if that's truly the peace that you were thinking. But somehow, people get fooled over and over. Every 4 years, people get fooled into thinking that things will get better by choosing people that are unfaithful to lead the country. Would you marry someone that's unfaithful? Or go into business knowing how they deal with other businesses? And then you think that it's going to work out with you? And this is the problem with sin. And so the point that I wanted to make is that when we receive a second chance, it's not like for us to say, I got away with it and live however I want. What's the purpose that that's another opportunity, a second chance? What is that opportunity? When I know in New York there's, I don't know if I could be wrong, but it was called you get a bite of the apple. And in other words, you commit a petty crime or something, and they say, you know what, you have a clean record. This is your first time. We're going to give you a break. Right? What is that? What is that telling you? Like, how is that second chance for you to go back out and commit more crimes and to live the same way? No. That is for you to learn and say, listen, I'm going to do better. Right? Isn't that the whole purpose of a second chance? It's for you to reform, for you to change your ways and understand that what you're doing, you're hurting people. You're hurting yourself, your family, and you don't get away with crime. You don't get away with sin. Just because you have the power to hire any lawyer you want or get a whole department of the country to back you up, you think that there's certain things you can get away from or get away with. You're not going to get away with. Sooner or later, you're going to pay the consequences, or your kids are going to pay the consequences. And so later on, we're going to see that, we have to deal honestly. And this is the whole story of the Gibeonites, I believe. We have to deal honestly, because if we don't, it's going to be difficult for everybody. And you're still going to pay the consequences. And so here we have a situation that God has invested so much in the nation of Israel. And they failed so many times. And God still is, in the title second chance, but it's, of course, we know that it's more than a second chance. But God has invested so much. And now he's given this generation the privilege of crossing over and taking land that was promised to them if they were obedient. But at the same time, second chances are for you to commit yourself to God and work with God, be a co-laborer with God, to do something that is special, to live righteous. There have been times when generations of people have rejected God over and over again. 400 years. The Gibeonites have been saying, nope. What makes you think they're going to come to you and say, hey, listen, we have a deal with you? They haven't been faithful for 400 years. And they're going to start being faithful now? We have to be careful in who we get into a covenant with, right? And so if a woman is a harlot and you say, I want you to be faithful to me, you have to be careful. I'm not saying that person cannot change. All I'm saying is that it's going to take some time. Because when we come from the world into the church, it takes time for you to develop strong faith and to leave that life behind. But Joshua stood firm. He was very consistent in his life and his spiritual life. And no matter what happened, Joshua was always there. And he understood what it took in order for him to do what he did. He had to be faithful to God, right? That reminds me of Psalms 1, right? That's really, if you want to be a leader, read and study that psalm. Because the truth of the matter is that when someone is faithful, it leads others to be faithful. We've been in situations where a husband is not doing well, right? But then he's exposed to the gospel. He starts attending church. And then he changes. And what kind of influences is that going to have with the family? That family is like, oh, wow, we're having a better life, right? So let's go to church with dad, right? The mother will follow and the rest of the family will follow. That's just, how life is. And so Joshua is moving forward in faith. What is the rest of Israel going to do? Isn't that the best choice? Because they had a choice. They could have gone back to Egypt. But that's not the plan. That's not the reason why we have second chances in life. Second chances basically is something that we receive that we don't deserve, but we're giving a second chance. So make that the best of second chances. Yes.
And I think also it's important to remember that even though the Israelites were given a second chance, and it was demonstrated to them once the walls of Jericho came down, but even if you are given a second chance, there's still possibilities that people will go astray.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that in the life of Achan, that he saw everything that happened, but yet
Mm-hmm.
seeing that opportunity of a second chance, he didn't move forward with that because he failed. So I think we have to also come to that realization. Yes, God gives you a second chance,
Mm-hmm.
but like you mentioned, it's an opportunity for reform. It's an opportunity for change. But yet Achan didn't change.
Right. And that's just the sad reality of life. Look at Judas. He was exposed to the same thing as all the other disciples. But the pull, right? His desire to have riches and position was greater than being obedient to God. And praise, the best praise is to be obedient. It's not, to be screaming and hollering or, have a church singing for 2 hours. Praise is for you to be obedient. And this is what God wants. And second chances is for us to be obedient, not be disobedient. In Joshua 2, we get this opportunity, right, to see a little bit further what happened with the spies. And we're not going to read the whole thing. You know the story, but I'll read verse 1. And Joshua, the son of Nun, this is in chapter 2 of Joshua. And Joshua, the son of Nun, set out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, even Jericho. And they went and came into an harlot's house named Rahab and lodged there. This is what I read before. And I'm reading it again because this is important. Because there's just so many lessons here to learn. Of course, Sister Tamara mentioned, how you treat strangers. And Rahab treated them well, and she was rewarded for that. But one of the things I know here is that when they were sent into Jericho, what was the purpose? The purpose was to destroy, right? The walls came down, right? God knocked down the wall, and what they were supposed to do when they went in? They were supposed to destroy, right? And I find that very interesting because, I don't know how it worked out, but it worked out that not only she was saved, but also her family was saved. And so that's another unique thing, right? Because it's like, oh, come on, let's go over to Rahab's house. And they're like, Rahab, isn't she? A lot of crazy stuff happens in the house. I'm not going to that house, But they went. And I'm saying to myself, maybe we can discuss this. Why they listen to Rahab? Like, yes.
So I'm thinking she would have a better pulse and on what the people and the leaders
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, and the mere fact that for 40 years Israel didn't believe that it was possible. For 40 years, the Canaanites believed it was possible. So very, very strange juxtaposition or dichotomy there, or whatever going on. So, but I think it's more so she would be the best person, I think, to have a pulse, not so much on what the general public, but also the leaders. What is their thinking? And I think that's where, like, I guess people in ivory palaces don't understand. People on the street have a better pulse of what's going on sometime in the society than people like in the bubble, you know, the Washington bubble or stuff like that. So I think that's what it is. It's easier to talk to a regular man in the street than to talk to somebody there. And it's even better to talk to people who, like her, because she would know the inner thoughts, the private thoughts of her clients, than the clients probably would even tell their wife or tell their children.
Yeah, I think there's certain type of individuals that have that, but there's certain type of individuals that are leaders that don't have it. Because I remember one time New York City went through a severe storm, and people in Staten Island died because of the waters, you know. One police officer was even electrocuted. And so Bloomberg went in, and he visited, and that's what they should do, right? See what they're dealing with. But then afterwards, he gave the okay for the city marathon to go, move forward. Was that the right decision? It didn't go well. He had to cancel because the people were still in mourning. There was no connection there. You see, he's doing life different. Like, he's in a different world. He's in a bubble. And the people here are living life, right? They have to put, the pants on one leg at a time and go to work. And they have to pull the day in of what? Sweat, tears? What's it? Blood, sweat, and tears? And he's there. He's working hard, don't get me wrong, but he's in a different, he doesn't have to worry about bills, in other words. Regular people, they have it hard. And so he said, oh yeah, you know, go do the marathon because we have to move forward. I think this will cheer up New York City. That's in his mind. And no, people are like, no. We don't feel like running. People just died. The city's going through a difficult time. And you want to do a marathon? Didn't anybody in the administration say, I don't think so. You know, this is wrong. You see how important Daniel is in administrations? And I could go for it. There was a time where, like in Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, he could have backed off, but he said, no, I have a dream, you know, and he continued forward. There's so many other leaders that caught that moment and they said, no, we're going to move forward. If Trump would have said, this is a disaster coming our way. This is COVID. Many people are going to die, but we're going to get through it. If he would have dealt honestly, if he would have dealt in a different way and helped the people, I think he would have been reelected. But he decided to do otherwise. And I don't expect anything else because he's ungodly. But I'm just saying, if leaders, you know, they behave in a different way, things would be different. What if the king of Jericho would have said, Rahab, listen, what happened? What did they say? Because I've heard what you heard, and we're in trouble. But no, what did he say? But what he said, no, we want to kill them. And it caused their destruction. Rahab lived, family lived, but everybody perished, including that king. Just think about it. By this time, how many kings have Israel slew already? And what makes them think that? So I don't know. You have a comment?
I was just going to make the point that, like the pastor was saying, that she knew what was going on in the affairs of Jericho, because she says, I know that the Lord has given you the land, that your terror has fallen upon us. all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. So she had heard this report. She knew about these things. And like you mentioned, she knew about these things, and she said to the spies, for them to have mercy upon her. And not only her, but her family. And like you mentioned, instead the king comes, sends his men and says, give them up. So he rebelled against the I would say the sentence that was already meted out for that country, and he rebelled against it. Rahab instead, repented and said, I know that this is what the Lord is going to do, therefore, I'm at your mercy. Show mercy upon me. The king, on the other hand, was like, no, give them to me. We're going to fight this thing, and they're not going to come in and conquer. So there you see the two different positions that we ourselves can hold too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we could see the writing on the wall. We
Mm-hmm.
could see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
We could see that, these things that are occurring around us are basically, we're seeing, prophecy being fulfilled,
Mm-hmm.
little by little. And we could rebel against it and say, no, it's not, or we could admit to it and also have a false belief that prophecy is being fulfilled, but not in the way that God says. So, we could rebel against it, or we can acknowledge and say, we see things happening. And, what we have to do, we have to consecrate ourselves more, not be led by some foolish leaders
Mm-hmm.
on the path of destruction, but to allow, the true leader to lead us in the way that we should go. So we see here in this story the opportunities that God gives us, the mercy that he shows. And say, before destruction comes, I'm giving you an opportunity to turn from your ways. Rahab turned.
Mm-hmm.
The other people didn't. And we could see
Mm-hmm.
how a foolish leader can lead the country
Mm-hmm.
to destruction.
Now, today in this country, we cannot fool ourselves into think that we're better than the people in Jericho. The system of governance and the mindset is still with us today. We have these great walls. Maybe we could stop them. Despite the fact that they were given food for 40 years, despite the fact that they have plenty of water, despite the fact that there's nobody sick in the camp. I mean, I could go on. And today, we think the same. Oh, we had this great military. We will be fine. And that's just not the case. But, sometimes I think also, because Rahab saw, she didn't see, she heard. It says it heard, right? She heard the same thing. And I'm saying to myself, she heard, plus, was she benefiting from the system in Jericho? Was she benefiting? She's being used and abused. She's a harlot. So, she's not, her family may be in the same situation. They're not maybe benefiting from this system. Think about living in Jericho. Yes.
Wanted to share a comment from our YouTube platform. Brother Craig notes, a stranger could be the one that saves us. They may have the remedy for what ails us. They are willing to work in the nursing home.
Yeah, that's another point I was going to bring out. The blessings that strangers bring to a nation. And so the spies came to Rahab, right? And, Rahab heard. And what did she do? How did she treat the strangers? I'm just interested more to just see and what transpired, because this is very interesting to me. Here's Rahab working out a deal that's much better than the king. Haven't you gotten the impression that you can make a better deal than the president dealing with other nations? Because it's one of these things where she's like, I'm on my own. It comes a time where you're in a nation and you're on your own, and you have to do what you need to do in order to preserve yourself and your family, because the leaders is going some other way, right? And you're like, no. We have to serve God, because that's what's going to preserve us. And the faith, the little faith that she had, she exercised that. And when the soldiers came in and they asked for the spies, what did she say? They went that way. You know, that kind of thing. And go after them, right? She protected them. She was protecting the lives of the spies, but she's also protecting who? She's protecting, yeah. And this is the whole argument, like with the Gibeonites and the lying. She lied and the Gibeonite lies, but maybe we could talk about that. But she's exercising the limited amount of knowledge that she had. Think about the amount of knowledge the Israelites had, and they rebel. And then you give this little flicker of light to Rahab, and she's like, I want to make a deal with you. How many people look at Jericho and they say, man, I wish I was in the other side of that wall? But she's like, in the wall, she said, no, I want to go outside these walls. Sometimes we think to ourselves that other people, just because they looks like they're living better, that they're better off. But that's not true. It's surprising that, this is a harlot Rahab, and she's like, no. We know there's, what is it? No fear. There's fear in us, right? There's no, we have no more courage, I believe it said. But she's in a place, living a life that, from what I know, nobody wants. And she has an opportunity here to join, right, godly people. Think about this, a storm coming, and you see the havoc that storm is doing, and you're like, no, we'll be fine. We don't have to evacuate. I don't know. Some people would say that was common sense. I don't know. Yes.
Brother Craig on our YouTube platform makes another comment. She knew that the end was near. The interesting thing about that was that when you read the text, she told the spies that we know that the Lord is with you.
We know that the Lord is with you.
Your terror is fallen upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So that had happened 40 years ago.
They know the whole
were
story.
Still talking about that story.
Sure.
And because remember, between that time and this point when she noted that they defeated the the king of Sion and Og, a lot of time has passed by, but just from those events,
Mm-hmm.
they knew, everyone knew something was coming, and everyone knew that that's it, we're all done. The difference, though, I think, with her is that she realized the God that's leading Israel is the true God,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to follow that God, while everyone else is thinking, well, we're going to dig in our heels and fight.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of mindset and problem exists even today.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of people realizing we're headed in a wrong direction,
Mm-hmm.
we need to make some changes and do things differently. We're going to dig in our heels and fight. And nothing ever good comes from that.
No, what did the Pharisees say when Jesus was on the cross? Let his blood? Or it's better for one man to die We have that today. And we have to say, no, no. We know that that's going to exist. But we can't be following these leaders. If the leaders, go one way and you know that's wrong, don't go that way. Like I know that peace plan that's going on, that's not a peace plan. I know it's not. It may seem like it, but it's not. Just wait and watch. Because what is in the hearts and the minds of individuals looking at that piece of land? What do they want? And are there people willing to pay big money to live there? So what makes me think that there's going to be peace? There's no peace. But I wanted to just stress the fact that Rahab, it's kind of like similar to the woman at the well kind of story. And, she became, part of the line of Jesus? So she was like rewarded greatly. And, we're living in Jericho. Don't make no mistake about it. But we don't have to be in that mindset where things are coming our way and we like, no, we're going to fight against it. No, this is the consequences of life, living in Jericho. And we want to say, no, Lord, we know that you are the true God. We know that salvation comes through Jesus Christ. There's certain things we know. Just like there's certain things Rahab know, there's certain things we know. And we have to keep our part of the covenant, right? Got to make a covenant, keep our part. What did the spies do? Put that red scarlet outside the window? And remember the story with Passover, where the Jews had to put that blood on the side post and on the lintel, it's called, on the top? What is that? That's a demonstration of your faith. And when they saw that what is it, that red lace? The what? The cord. Oh, the red cord? They knew, that's one of us. Don't touch them. Everything else is going to be destroyed. But the part of the covenant was that if anybody leaves that place, then what? The blood is in their head. And we have to be obedient and stay within the confines of the law. The law is our protection. If we lose that, then what do we have? You had a comment?
I think that one of the other points is, and I know that a lot of people sometimes get, trip over the fact of the matter that Rahab lied in order to be able to protect.
Yes, that's the next.
To protect the spies, but like sometimes, like a lot of times, people lie in order to protect what's convenient for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily looking at the consequences of what's forthcoming, right? Because like people today are very hypocritical, and they say
Mm-hmm.
like you mentioned, when you welcome in the stranger, there's a benefit to
Mm-hmm.
welcoming in the stranger for you, and for Rahab it was a benefit to welcome that stranger. But a lot of times people are hypocritical and they say, nope, we don't want the strangers in here. But then at the same time, they're waving the flag, and they have the strangers working in their yards, building the fences, putting up the roof. But yet, they'll tell you, like, no, the strangers got to go. Or they treat them bad, or they, call them all kinds of name and do whatever it is. But yet, here we see that when Rahab lies to protect the spies, it became a benefit to her. and not that it's appropriate for us to lie, but nonetheless, it's like we got to be able to make a determination as to what are some of the consequences of us being unwelcoming to a stranger as opposed to being welcoming. Because I think that that's where the crux of the matter is. It's not so much the fact that she lied in protecting the spies, but it is the action that she actually did, that she welcomed the spies. And because of that action, she received the blessing. And because of her harboring those strangers, you do what you need to do in order to be able to fulfill that action of being a welcoming. Right, because like we see like the same thing like Abraham, right? When he welcomed those angels, he received the blessing that he was told what was going to happen. You know, so.
But Abraham didn't know. He was doing what Abraham does.
But in return, he received that blessing.
Yeah, that's a blessing, and being, what is it, hospitable.
Hospitable, and we see that you know with this woman and with many other stories in the Bible. When the person harbors the stranger, when they're hospitable, God provides a blessing. It's so we cannot get caught up in the fact that, oh, she lied. No, the fact of the matter is that she was welcoming, and for that she received a blessing. But today, a lot of people are very hypocritical, and they want the blessing, but at the same time, they're like calling 911. There's, you know, the car wash place is loaded with immigrants. But yet they go take their cars to get washed there. So you know, so we see that.
Now they got to wash their own cars.
It's a curse. It's a curse.
That's part of the curse. That's part of the, you know. But I mean, there's just so much there. Yes.
I wanted to add on to what Sister Martha was saying, because she made a very important point that people focus on the fact that Rahab lied, and not on the fact that she welcomed and harbored the spies and sent them back, and also acknowledged to them that she also believed in the same God that they served. I always thought it was ridiculous for people to even focus on the fact that Rahab lied, because here we have someone who was in Canaan, who her knowledge of God was based on the stories that she heard from what happened when he was leading them out of Egypt. And with the little information she knew, she did what she could. She did what was in her power. So even if that meant, yes, she lied, but that's what she was able to do. And she did it willingly to protect them, and as a result, she also saved her family. It's almost, to me, a comparison of when the Philistines had the ark in their temple, and their god Dagon was thrown down, and then they realized, you know what, we need to give this back. And they had some vague idea of what was supposed to be done, so they put the ark in a cart, and they made the gold emeralds and the different things.
It was dragged
and
by,
it was taken by oxen. And God didn't strike them down because that's the best they could do, because they didn't really know.
They wanted the end result, which was no more hemorrhoids.
They wanted the end result, but they did what they could with the little knowledge that they had. So God didn't strike them down for that. But David, on the other hand, when Uzziah was too close to the ark, Uzziah got struck down, and he dealt with David because they knew better. So it's easy. Now, if the spies had lied, okay, that would be one thing. That's it's not really fair so much to try to hold, at least for her at this point in her life, to try to hold her up to standards that she was doing the best she could with the little information she had. But I also wanted to go back to the YouTube platform because there's a few more comments.
Okay.
Brother Green notes that she knew that though Jericho was spending $1 trillion per year on the military, she could read the signs of the times. And then Sister Genevieve notes, the story of Rahab shows both Christians and sinners alike, that God does nothing without giving us the opportunity for repentance.
Yeah. Remember, Rahab wasn't dealing with God's people like the Gibeonites. She was dealing with people that probably didn't pay her. Right? Oh, you know good. You talk bad about me, but you come see me. You know, she's dealing with Canaanites. And, you know, and she's probably thinking, you know good. These people are going to benefit me. These strangers are going to benefit me. You know what? I'm going to help them. And when they come, they're going to take me out of this place. And I'm going to be part of the line of Jesus. Well, she didn't say that, but, you know.
In my mind, that was a very strange way to look at it. I found it weird, this concept of she lied. Who she lied to? Did she lie to the Israelites?
Yeah, she wasn't dealing with them.
But she didn't lie to the Israelites.
No, she's speaking to the soldiers.
Right. So she never lied to them.
No, she made a covenant with the.
So she dealt fair with them, right? So in my mind, I would think a way to describe her would be number one, she would be a working woman, right? So she's a woman that was working woman. Because I'm thinking about Jesse, right? And so how does Jesse look at her? Not how the people write the lesson and the people in Sabbath schools look at her, but how does Jesse look at her? She's a working woman. She's a woman of valor. See, so that would be how you describe her. Like she's a brave woman because she put in her life on the line. So she's a hero she's the hero in the story, right? Because there's 40 years of failure, men and women failing, and this woman says, "I'm gonna take the choice. I'm gonna make the choice that said these people are gonna get it done," and they got it done under Caleb and stuff like that. She's a woman of distinction because the thing about it is she's walking in Israel. There's no woman like her, in Israel, because she would be like you think about this story when it was fresh. How powerful the story would be in Israel, that she believed when nobody else believed, and she wasn't even a Jew, a Hebrew. She didn't she just heard about the stories, So you think about a woman of distinction, a woman of valor, a woman that basically risked her life because. So they're looking at the story from this one point of view. She not just did what she could; she did the right thing, right? And she made the right deal. She made a compact with the winners that she believed by faith. That's why the Bible in Hebrew said by faith. She made the right choice. And so I think there's multiple ways you can look at her. She was, to all intents and purpose, she was the mother of David and the mother of David, a mother, so to speak. She was the mother of Solomon's. Solomon, she's a great grandmother.
She's in the line.
Yeah, in the line. So when you think about it, I think they're not catching her character. That her character was of such that she was, lying. That's a stupid discussion. The discussion really is what is the attributes that you could put on her. That in essence, as you say, with the Gibeonites, they had a different story because they were men of valor that did kind of the opposite of distinction and opposite of valor. They went the opposite direction. They were trying to trick and stuff instead of just coming and say, let's just do a deal and let's not fight. She decided to say, oh no, I'm gonna work against these losers over here, and they all were losers because she knew them personally.
But think about the deal in Jericho, and think about the deal with Gibeonites. Who made up that deal with the Gibeonites? Oh, who made a deal in Jericho?
She made a deal she made a good deal for her family. That is how I And the other thing I would say also is that when Babylon fell, it was not they were barricading themselves with tariffs in Babylon, and they closed the walls, and the Iranians were outside pounding at the walls, and so by the time the handwriting say you're found wanting, and the handwriting went on the wall, It was already obvious. You know what I'm saying? Like that the Iranians were at the door and you basically have to be barricading yourself. You were already in a failing position. So a lot of time, like we're talking about and we're intimating what's going on in our country, you're in a failing position, and instead of just saying, let's work a deal out, you're there closing the doors, you know, putting up trade barriers, putting up this, and you're in a losing position. And so I think the thing that you're talking about, Bloomberg, I just want to go back to that with Bloomberg. When leaders are in that type of situation, they're in a kind of a mental bubble, and they just can't acknowledge the fact that we just took a hit. That Staten Island flooding was a hit, but they're all going to move on because we can't keep down, and there's a time to mourn. And I think leaders cannot realize that says something went wrong, and we need to acknowledge that and kind of how we work through this, and we deal with those who, you know, hurricane after hurricane, tornado after tornado, and this idea is we're gonna win, we're the best, we're the greatest, you know, and that's we're in this. It's like story after story, Jericho, Babylon. They can't just say, oh man, that's this trouble coming, because what happened? They're in a bubble of their own making. And I think that's the difference between Rahab, and that's the difference between leaders when they're about to fail. They can't just acknowledge the fact that hurt. I need to go to the hospital.
The thing about those leaders is that they continue to make bad decisions. Oh, now it's stop and frisk. Okay, that came back to you when you were running for president. I mean, you do wrong thinking that these walls are going to protect you, but it comes back. You know, we have a situation here that now Joshua made a deal with the Gibeonites, and what happened? Was he warned when you're dealing with these people? He was warned. The Spirit of prophecy says they were warned. He was warned. You got to be careful with these people because they're so conniving, and they're there being dishonest. And what was the rationale? Listen, we're a good army, and there's men of valor, but look at what happened with the other cities. They were men of valor too. Let's preserve our life. Let's deceive them into thinking something else, and let's go into a covenant. It's very interesting though. Why you think they made a covenant with Israel? Maybe because they're faithful and they know that they cannot break that covenant, right? Because why else would the Gibeonites make a covenant with Israel? They knew, right, something about Israel, and they took advantage of that, and they deceived Joshua. But what happens now? They became basically servitude, right? They're doing menial tasks. They had to fetch the water, cutters of wood. And because they made a covenant, now they have to pay a price, you know, and it's very humiliating. But I really do think that there was some, and the Gibeonites were saved because they saw the sanctuary. They experienced what was going on. So I pray that, you know, there were many that were saved because of that. But it teaches us a lesson, right? Isn't it better to deal honestly with people? To deal honestly with other nations? And what happens when Saul went after the Gibeonites? What happened? Didn't Saul have to pay a price? How many sons died? 7 sons. The only son I think that was saved was Joshua's son. David protected Joshua's son. Jonathan's son. He said, no, Jonathan's son, I'm protecting him. But 7 other sons had to be hanged. They were killed because there's a covenant. And so God was not happy when Saul went after them. And so God is very serious with us dealing honestly with ourselves and dealing honestly with him. And so this whole story with Joshua is for us to understand that it's for us to be better leaders, to be godly leaders, to have a connection with God so we can move forward and be successful. Not 10, 20 years later praying, oh, I'm stumbling over the same sin. And no. It's to move forward, to live faith by faith and grow and overcome. And this is for us to continue to study and live. I ran out of time. I have more material, but I'll leave it now to Sister Tamara. Thank you for watching at Covenant Adventist Church Sabbath School.
Thank you, Elder Jose, for leading the lesson study, and thank you everyone for your comments and your attention. So as I said earlier, I started off with the Gibeonites, and I wanted to end with Rahab. I always like to try to end on a more positive note. But so I'll read a reading. This is coming from Daughters of God, page 35. And it reads, Rahab was a harlot who lived on the wall of Jericho. She hid the 2 Israelite spies sent to check out the defenses of that city. Because of her kindness to them and her declaration of belief in God, the spies promised that the lives of Rahab and her family would be spared when the attack came on Jericho. A few miles beyond the Jordan River, just opposite the place where the Israelites were encamped, was the large and strongly fortified city of Jericho. This city was virtually the key to the whole country, and it would present a formidable obstacle to the success of Israel. Joshua therefore sent 2 young men as spies to visit this city and ascertain something as to its population, its resources, and the strength of its fortifications. The inhabitants of the city, terrified and suspicious, were constantly on the alert, and the messengers were in great danger. They were, however, preserved by Rahab, a woman of Jericho, at the peril of her own life. In return for her kindness, they gave her a promise of protection when the city should be taken. So let that also be, as was brought out through one of the comments in the lesson study, that we protect those who are following God or declare their faith in God, and also let us be kind to the strangers. You know, one of the greatest lessons that we see throughout the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, is that we are supposed to be kind to the stranger because his people were once strangers in a strange land. And the same way we are to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, we should be kind to strangers because we were once strangers. So I just encourage you as you go through this week to exercise faith in all aspects of your life, from the little things to the big things, and to always remember to be kind to the stranger and to speak up for the strangers. So we will have our closing hymn. Please turn in your hymnals to hymn number 618. And please rise as we sing our closing hymn, hymn number 618. Hymn 618. Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner, it must not suffer loss. From victory unto victory, his army he lead, till every foe is vanquished and Let us kneel for our closing prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for the things we've read this morning, the things we've discussed. I pray, Lord, that you will strengthen us each day, that we may always, Lord, have the faith that you require us to have, that we may live uprightly before thee, and that we may be kind to those who are strangers amongst us, and always be willing to share a word in season. I pray you will continue to be with us through these Sabbath hours, and that you will continue to have your Spirit be with us here and with those online, and you will continue to bless us and guide us. In Jesus' name, amen. We will now pause for a short break. We will reconvene at 12:15. You are dismissed from Sabbath school.